did you all enjoy that? And have you all now got some really, really interesting resources now? Yeah. And are you looking forward to now what's going to come next? Yeah. Awesome. So I guess we're all ready now to learn about something called the communication model. And that explains how we process information to ourselves and to others. So get excited. Be keen. Yes. And listen. You know, in my house, when I was growing up, Christmas was a really special time. And even today, I really, really like Christmas. And I love the magic of it. I love the presents, but I also love the lead up to Christmas. I love putting the decorations up. And even now, I love something that's really bright and shiny. In particular, I love a good Christmas tree. And quite frankly, the more lights that it has on it, the better. A rule that I have in my household is if it's not leaning, there's not enough lights on it. I remember when I was about 8 years old, and I remember my mum, she would put the turkey in, and she'd put it in at some ungodly hour. I mean, quite frankly, it was amazing that a turkey that size would actually fit. We'd had turkey for months afterwards. But I remember always waking up on Christmas morning to the smell of turkey. And this one Christmas was no different. And I remember, I still believed in Father Christmas. Can you remember that far back? Do you remember believing in Father Christmas? And I totally believed that if I was to leave my window slightly ajar, I believed totally that I'd be able to hear the bells and that I'd be able to hear him coming. And I used to get so excited that I couldn't sleep. And I would just wait and listen. So this year was no different. And this year, I thought, I am going to wait up all night. Now clearly I was 8, so that didn't happen. But I remember waking up and it being really dark outside. So I figured it must have been in the middle of the night. And I could hear something or someone downstairs. This is it. This is it. And I began to slowly creep down the stairs to what looked like a basement, really. This kind of dank basement. I sort of looked around it and I couldn't really see much of it, really. Now, are any of you Walking Dead fans? No. We are. That's good. So for those of you that don't know, the Walking Dead series is a zombie series. And throughout the series, the zombies become a bit of a backdrop, really, because what it really talks about, it's about a survival of a group of people. And you've got the protagonist, Rick, who I only learned actually the actor's English. Did not know that. And he tries to save everybody. So there's a bunch of people, and it's his job. He takes on this job to save everybody. And he's saving them from the zombies. Now, it was really interesting because whilst Rick takes on this almost cavalier attitude of saving, and I don't know actually, quite frankly, how he survives, you know. I think the most that happens to him really is he grows a beard through the series. Yeah. And the zombies, I think, every series get less and less attractive. And when he tries to save his group of people, he feels that if he just understands what they want, and by understanding what they want and what they're doing there, maybe he's got a chance of saving them. Now, if anyone's ever seen a zombie, pretty much what they say, really. Yeah. I would kind of laugh because I thought, well, how on earth can you speak to something like that? Yeah. But he does, in a weird kind of way. So what he does is he looks at them and then backs away because he thinks, oh, they've not seen him. All right, they've not seen him. And maybe he thought, well, perhaps if I just got really chatty with them, which is really funny because I don't know if anyone of you knows, but I'm married and my husband is very different from me. My husband's very, very chatty. And a passionate person with strong opinions of his own. And he's quite vocal about some of those opinions. In fact, I think a couple of you here might know my husband. So he's got really strong and passionate views, and I'm quite apathetic about a lot of what he's quite passionate about. And he will text me. And he'll send me really long texts. I don't know quite how SMS became SMS in his world, but they're always punctuated. The spellings are in full. None of this see you later, none of that. And he will send me a text, a full-on virtual essay of his day. The who, what, why, where, when and how. And usually, in person, he says all of that at high volume and very, very fast. Because he's from Essex. And so he would send me a text like this, and I'd get the text, and it'd be a long text. I'm scrolling through. And the end part of his text is, well, so, how are you? And I could see him in my mind. I could see him there going, well, so what do? Fine. Have we all sent text messages like that? Fine. So not many of you, some of you may or may not know, but I spend a lot of time in family law. And I had this one case where I was at the Royal Courts of Justice in the Strand. It was one of my first times there, so it was quite grand. It's quite a ostentatious building, and the thing belongs in something from English Treasury, National Heritage. And I won the case. It was a slam dunk, really successful. And I walked out of court in the great big gates, you know, the stuff that you see on the telly. Yeah, walked out there and I thought, I know what I'm going to do. So, would you like to know how somebody really ticks? Yeah. And would you like to know the connection between mind and body? I mean, we've already started talking about some of that today, haven't we? that would be something of interest to you, right? So in NLP, we have a communication model, and that explains how we process information between ourselves and other people. Now, the NLP model was developed by Tad James and Wyatt Wordsworth in 1988, and this is the foundation of all NLP, and it draws heavily on cognitive psychology, and it was the groundbreaking work of somebody called Alfred Korzybski and Noam Chomsky. Now, you may have heard in your audios Bruce Almighty, as I like to call him, talking about Alfred Korzybski. And he was an American Polish scholar, and he argued that actually that the human knowledge world was limited by the human nervous system, therefore establishing a mind-body connection. And he said that actually nobody can access reality, given that we already know that some of the things we're doing are filtered. And his best known saying was, "The map is not the territory." So did you know that we process everything through 5 senses? That's a pretty standard thing that we know, right? But did you know that we're processing about 4 million bits of information per second? That's a lot, right? Now, most of this is assimilated unconsciously. I mean, if you think about it, thank God, really, that it is processed unconsciously, because there'd be never any way that we could realistically process 4 million bits of information. So our unconscious mind has a system to filter that, so that we only have the bits of information actually that we're aware of. Now, our conscious mind will deal with, I don't know, between 5 plus or minus 7 bits of information. And when we think about that, really, that's for things like if you want to access your phone number, your address, the stuff that you really need and that you'd be aware of. So we have to have, our unconscious mind has to have a filtration system, because with all that information, we need some way of sorting it. So, use the purple pen. I don't know why I keep doing this, it always looks a bit like Alfred Hitchcock. So, we have an external event happen to us. Okay? But actually, what our minds do in here, our unconscious, filters it. Pick another colour. And what you'll do, that information, you'll generalise it. So Bridget had a lovely one this morning. All dogs, all cute dogs were fluffy. What?
All fluffy dogs are thick, I think is the actual quote.
So
they have no character.
That's right.
They have no character.
So we saw a really cute, I know, which has a generalisation. So we saw a really kind of cute, fluffy dog. Oh. Yeah. All fluffy dogs don't have a character. That's brilliant. But we do, don't we? We generalise it, you know. We generalise that what do I generalise? All soaps are crap. Yeah.
Backing cars are difficult.
Yes.
Probably
Yeah.
one to you.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. So if the thing is, if we didn't generalise everything, then we'd be stuck in the detail the whole time. So just generalising stuff helps us get through the day, really. But sometimes some generalisations aren't particularly useful. Yeah. The other thing then we're going to do will be distorting something. And by distorting it, you're kind of just filtering out the stuff that you don't actually need. Yeah. And then you're going to delete it. So when you parked up today, who drove? Everyone drove here today? Yeah? Okay. So when you parked up, you didn't notice the 4 hanging baskets and the 6 pots of begonias outside, did you? You did. But I bet you didn't notice that until after you parked your car.
No, it wasn't afterwards. It was when I got back for it lunchtime.
Well, yeah.
They were probably there before.
Yeah. But when you parked up this morning, you had to delete all of that stuff that went on around you. So it wasn't useful to you at that time to notice the 4 hanging baskets, the 6 pots of begonias. You may not have even noticed that there were other cars in the car park. I delete that because when I go and park the car, I am focused on that space. Now, when an external event happens, all of those external events will be based upon values. And what do I mean by values? Well, that's the stuff that's really, really important to you. And what's important to you, what's really important to you in one aspect of your life will be different to another part of your life. So for example, what's important to you about work will be different to what's important to you about a relationship. That external event will also be filtered by your beliefs. I'm not just talking about religious beliefs, I'm talking about beliefs that you have about yourself, beliefs that you have about others. Some of that will be helpful, some of that may be unhelpful. And some of the more unhelpful beliefs may lead to how you deal with matters, or how you deal with that external event. That external event, how you deal with that, will be based upon your memories. So we've already talked here this morning. In fact, some of us have had quite painful memories that will have led to maybe a belief about something, which in turn may create a value. Some memories are great, some not so much. That external event, how you deal with that external event will depend on your attitudes towards something. You see how this is all starting to fit together? Because you're also, you've never spelled decisions. A spell check on this is out. So your decisions about certain things, that will influence on how you deal with a certain event. And then finally, something called meta programs, which we will get into much more when and if you go on to Master Prac. Meta programs are absolutely fascinating, but they're how you communicate. They're how you deal with matters. So whether you're somebody that likes something the same every year, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, whether the way that you communicate is in short content length or really long content length. Okay. How many times do you get convinced to make a decision? Are you somebody that buys straight away? Or are you the sort of person that just takes the time? Maybe you have 3 or 4 times to convince. All of this will create an internal representation of something. And sometimes that internal representation may be less than useful, maybe less than helpful, less than positive. That internal representation will lead to an internal state. How you feel about something based upon all of this. And then that leads to your physiology. Sometimes, if you've got a cold, if somebody has a cold, that could be down to a belief that taking on too much can't be done. So I've done that. So my physiology has been in the past. I used to have chronic colds. Well, sometimes the chronic colds actually led to full-on flu. And that was because I believed that I couldn't do it all. More to the point, and more specifically, I had a belief that after 5 o'clock I was useless. Gin helps. And that leads to the behaviour. And you think about it, that we're, as practitioners or as people going around your everyday business, all you see is the behaviour. Now, as amazing NLP practitioners, you'll be thinking, wow, how do they do that behaviour? Because that behaviour, if you see that filtration system, that is, and every one of these is going to be different. Your values and beliefs and memories and decisions, all of that is going to be different to yours. So that behaviour is what you see. Now, and this is the cool bit, you can change any of these, or by even understanding any of these, will affect this. And it goes back, so if you change any of these, that will affect the internal representation, which will affect the internal state, which will affect the physiology, and then it will affect the behaviour. Any questions so far? You all with me?
If you affect the behaviour, does that in turn affect the bits that are being filtered? Your beliefs, your memories, your...
Well, yeah, so you want to be starting and changing these. Because this is always usually going to be the same. If somebody has a problem, there's 2 things that one can do about it. Somebody could either change the external environment, or they change the way that they react to it. Now, what often happens with people is that consciously they know, oh, you hear this quite big. People will say, I should be doing this. But actually, the shoulds, the must-haves, the I've got tos, doesn't always translate to what their behaviour is. So by changing this, that changes the behaviour. By trying to do it in reverse, which is kind of what you're suggesting, it's kind of like putting the horse before the cart.
So I guess if you change your behaviour, then you will change your it will go backwards to changing your emotional state, because if you do something, like if we went for a run around the hotel, it will actually change your physiology and your emotional state, and therefore your reality. Most people have, a behaviour that they either think is useful or not useful to them. And if we look at this, we can see where it's come from, and what NLP does is give you a whole load of tools and, sort of attitudes in order to change the behaviour, which is much quicker than just changing your behaviour in order to get the change in emotional state. Because if you try and, I have frequently tried to stop drinking, and I use the word tried there, which is why I haven't drinking wine at 6 o'clock. Consciously, I can work on that, and it might take me 21 days, or it might take me even 60 days, I think is the latest for how long to change a habit. But if you actually change the unconscious mind, which works really, really fast, and you change that in your reality, then your behaviour is going to change pretty instantaneously, which is what you're going to find on the course. So it's just a much quicker way of, the unconscious mind will create that behaviour very quickly. Whereas if you try and change the behaviour going backwards, that takes a lot longer.
And it's a bit like why this process is a lot quicker than traditional counselling, for example. Because if somebody imagines an iceberg, then in counselling often what happens is the tip of the iceberg is the stuff that's being kicked. And actually, this bit is beneath the berg. And what you're going to find is that a lot of the processes we do is quicker. It's a heck of a lot quicker. People have said that somebody could be in counselling for years, and I believe that. But imagine just changing any one of these. Any questions so far?
So can you see, with all the things that you've got on your charts, can you sort of start to think about where they might have come from? Because, your behaviour and your emotions are the domain of the unconscious mind, and this is all unconscious. And you have created beliefs, thoughts, feelings that have come from all of this. So can you start to think where yours might have come from, and maybe it's a memory, maybe you've made a decision somewhere which has then turned into a belief. What do you think?
Yeah.
Anyone got an example?
I definitely see how things like disappointment or would have then set me up to go, I'm not going to have that happen to me again, therefore in the future I'll cut it off before it starts.
So that's a sort of a strategy that you've learned to sort of change your behaviour then. So. So when did that disappointment arrive?
I think it's probably surrounding like dating, and the whole what I expected things to be out of a date or a relationship, and then been like, well, sod that, next time I turn up I'm going to talk about we're cutting the bill, for instance. We'll split the bill first rather than me keep going on dates and keep paying for the, that's just an example, but
I suppose you've
it would
generalised
then make me
that
approach the situation.
dates end up like this. From your one experience, you've
Yeah.
made a decision.
Might come out multiple times like that, and then I'm like, so in the future I'll be different. Which
So
won't
that's
be
that's how you make decisions, and it's just as quick as this in your brain, and decisions can be unmade very quickly as well, which is cool. Anyone else?
When you typically, where you've looked at these in the past, do you often see that it's one very specific belief or memory or attitude that you're dealing with, or do you tend to see that it can be a combination of a few?
I think, my kind of thinks that when you're doing breakthroughs with people, you end up with a whole load of limiting things, much as you've got on your flip chart, and quite often there's a top one. So the others have all sort of stemmed from that, and quite often there's a one instant that you were describing earlier. that will have wired that fear into your head. And it's a decision that you make at that time, which then becomes a belief, which then creates your reality, gives you an emotional state and changes in physiology through the fear. And then you do some sort of behaviour, whether that's running away or just feeling anxious or whatever. You're looking confused, June.
Yes.
It's a bit of a mind read, but
No, it was just more processing,
Yeah.
trying to apply that pattern with some of the stuff off my list.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about the thing around heights.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have a really early memory from, I think I was about 20 months old, somewhere around there. And my mum, dad and I flew to Switzerland to stay with some friends. And I don't know whether it was on the flight there or the flight back, but I remember things about that flight. And one of the things I remember is my dad wanted me to stand by the door. Must have been on the way back because I had this Swiss dress thing they'd bought me. And he wanted me to stand by the door of the aeroplane so he could take a picture while we were in the air.
Okay.
And I remember being afraid that the door would open and I'd fall out. So I'm just trying to...
Mm. And do you think that someone might have said that to you at some stage? Or? It's difficult because 20 months is quite young, isn't it?
Yeah.
To remember
I can't
everything.
think... I don't know. Don't know. My dad had flown before, my mum had never flown before, so maybe it was her anxiety
Yeah.
pitching onto me.
Yeah, because, as we've seen in the exercise with energy, we sort of all connect together in that exercise, isn't it? So your mum and your energies will be interconnected, for definite. Interesting.
Can you see, actually, that you create your reality? Both my sister and I remember a certain event with my parents, and when we both talk about that same thing that happened, we talk about it completely different. Now, as far as the event happened, or did it? She says it did, I say it didn't. But I'm pretty sure that my sister's, how she dealt with that external event, will mean that she behaved differently. Anyone else kind of joining dots?
So, I guess from this, we sort of get, everyone's got a different model of the world. People aren't their behaviours. So, as an identity, people aren't their behaviours. And everyone's doing the best they can with all their available resources, and the resources are those values, beliefs, memories, and what you do with them as a result of how you've been programmed from when you've been born, or even before you've been born.
And having that flexibility in your behaviour will mean that you'll be able to get into rapport with somebody very, very quickly. And for the purposes of communication, it must be like the person that you're communicating with. So how in terms of using this, can you see how you would use this? Yeah? Anyone got anything that they feel that actually just by knowing this, that they can change their behaviour or change the way they communicate?
See how I change my behaviour towards the thought of work is hard
Yeah.
and that it tires me out. so I could find a way of kind of changing those values and especially beliefs of what I think the outcome might be.
Yeah.
That I might stop myself being anxious and then producing the rest of the link behaviour before it's happened.
Yeah.
So what is it that's made you anxious, do you think? So as that internal state?
I think it's maybe the thought that what I'm doing isn't of value, or it's not worth doing, or it's too much hard work, or nothing's going to come of doing that.
So it's your beliefs, really, aren't they? That's where they come from. Yeah. And your memories, probably.
Yeah. Memories of doing things, and perhaps they didn't come out as I wanted them to.
Yeah.
You just instantly wire something in, and then off you go, and
perhaps
20 years later you've got that behaviour that you don't really want.
Yeah, and perhaps I didn't align my values to what I was doing at the time, so it wasn't fun or energising, it wasn't adventurous. So.
And of course behaviours get us results, so if we're looking for different results, then we need to tweak some of these things that are going on at an unconscious level. Okay, so that's a sort of pretty basic run through. Have you finished? Okay, no, you haven't. Sorry, yeah. Okay.
So, by looking at that, what if you could take charge of your life? And how would it be if you could build rapport with just about anybody with that? When I came out of court and I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I thought, I'm going to send him a text. Do you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to tell him all about my successful day in court via text. And it was quite interesting, really, because Rick was quite chatty with and then he thought, I'm not getting anywhere just by doing that. What if, to conceal ourselves, we were all a bit like that? So just to go around the corner, Rick went, and when I was creeping downstairs, I thought, I knew who this is. I could smell the turkey. And I could see the twinkling lights from the living room. Because we'd always kept our Christmas tree lights on at Christmas Eve, right? And I saw somebody in a red coat. But I recognised the form. It was my dad.
Okay, so I don't know if you've heard me talking about Dorothy and Ozzy. Dorothy is my English Bull Terrier dog. She's 3 now. And Ozzy is 8 months. Sort of going on 4 months, really. He's a bit of a cheeky chappy, and I talk about them a lot, and I take them for walks, and we go over the park, which is just over the road from where I live. And this day I went down to the park and I walked around, and I got to the bit by the railway line, and I was a little bit sort of slightly nervous around there, because I think, what if I lose them? And of course, because I thought that, I lost them. And they went up the banking, and I had to follow them, and I was pushing the brambles aside, and I was pushing, all the stones aside and everything that was on the banking going up to the railway track. And I got there, and they were there, so they were quite safe. And I thought, well, this is interesting. I've never actually been here before. So I had a look around, and when I looked up that way, it was really clear. And it sort of looked sunny and sort of, happy. And when I looked down that way, it was a totally different story. Because what was down there was sort of a series of grey blobs that were on the railway track. And some of them were swirling, and some of them were greyer, and some of them were blacker. And I thought, ooh, I don't know. I'm quite curious about what's going on down there. So I don't know if you know, I'm a Time Lord, Dr. Bridget. So I sort of got into my sort of virtual TARDIS and floated up above the railway line. And I thought, I'm just going to go off there and see what's there. And I passed, there were, little bits of, perhaps a little bit discomfort there, a bit more there, but the one that I was really heading for was one that was quite black and swirly. And I arrived, and I looked down, and I thought, what on earth is going on there? I could see an emperor, I could see the emperor's wife, and I could see someone that looked really, really uncomfortable. And he was surrounded by people who were going, what's this all about? And he just looked really, really uncomfortable, and people started walking away from him. And I thought, I've got to do something about this, because he's obviously in some distress. So I looked and I thought, well, what do I think that he needs to learn from this? And when I'd learnt what he needed to learn, what I did is I actually went down into that event, and I floated down and I patted him on the shoulder and said, hey, he was called Ptolemus or something like that. I said, what's wrong? He said, oh, I'm Julius Caesar's son. I've just been to emperor school, and it hasn't been a pleasant experience. People ignored me, people called me names. My mother's despairing of me, and look, all my soldiers, I'm supposed to be going to battle with them, and all my soldiers have just disappeared. They've turned their backs on me. I thought, do you know what's going on? And I took him over by his hand to a mirror, or a shield as it would have been in those days, and I asked him to have a look in that shield. And as he did, he turned to me and he said, do you know, I know what's wrong. And talking about getting things wrong, I used to be quite a good cook. So when I used to cook, I used to get it right, and then Rick moved in and he enjoyed cooking, and I was busy and I was working, and I thought, actually I don't really want to cook anymore, and which was good because Rick quite liked cooking. And I thought, one of these days I actually want to cook a proper meal again. I want to invite people round, and I want to get them sitting round and have a stunning meal. And I watched Rick and I saw what he did. He had this sort of recipe book out in front of him, turned down at the right page with, one of those big sort of things that hang on the edge that keep the pages. I can't think of the word for that now. A thing, as I would say. And and he'd look at the recipe, weigh all this stuff out, he'd get the right spices. He was making a curry at the time, so he got some turmeric, some garlic and various other spices, and he weighed them all out, and he had the teaspoons there as well. And it sort of, once he'd mixed it all together and he'd read the instructions and he'd put it in the oven, we sat down, and about half an hour later we had a totally amazing meal. And I thought, well, how difficult can that be? So the next time I thought about doing a meal, I thought, right, I'll have a glass of wine to start with, because that's what you do. Do I actually need an instruction book? Because look, I've watched Rick and I know roughly what's in it, and I Now, is it a teaspoon or a big spoon? And, you know, I don't know. So I started sort of pouring things in and mixing it up, and I thought, well, I don't really know what the right order is. I can't be bothered to get the recipe book now, and I'm going to just stir it all together. Had another glass of wine. I have a tendency not to finish cooking, actually, because I tend to have another glass of wine, and someone has to finish it for me. But actually, I actually finished this, and I put it in the oven. Had I think my sister came round for a meal, and we got it out, and it looked okay. And I said, well, let's start then. Took a spoonful, and actually spat it out. And, you know, that's a shame, because I quite like restaurants. Really like restaurants. And I was going with my friend to a restaurant about 2 years ago. And the sort of restaurant I like, they're sort of like mirrors and glass and wood and nice surroundings and flowers everywhere. And she turned up before me. I booked the meal, and we started off, and we went into the car park, really, and I met her there, and a waitress sort of came out and said, oh, hang on, we're not in the normal place, we're over here. I'm afraid there's refurbishment going on. So we went over there and went through the door, and you know, the door looked a bit dingy, to be honest, and it's sort of like one of these sort of brown colours. I went up the stairs, looked at the walls, they were brown. I looked at the waitress, she was wearing an apron which was brown. We got to the top of the stairs, we went into this little room and looked around, and I thought, do you know what, I don't actually feel that comfortable in here, because the pictures were all sort of brown, the menus were brown. I said to the waitress, look, you know, I really like coming here, it's a top restaurant, and you know what's going on? And she looked around me and she said, do you know, I think I know what it is. And she walked over to the curtains and she pulled them with a big shh. And in that moment, everything changed. So I expect you're all sitting there wondering what that's about. Notice some of you being a little bit amused by some of it. Is that right? And you know, it's something that, you know, it's a really good thing to stretch your mind, to talk about things that you don't know about, isn't it? And I'm going to talk to you now about the rest of the basics of NLP, which are about the themes, the presuppositions, and the prime directives, which I'm sure you've all heard about on your audios, have you? And the reason for doing this is because if we're learning NLP, we want to have a basic understanding of, you know, what's going on in NLP. We've just heard about the communication model. There are 5 themes that we need to look at in more detail in a minute. And we need to sort of make some basic assumptions about how things work and why people do things differently. And really it's about walking the walk and talking the talk. And I always say to people through all the levels of NLP that really you need to understand this sort of fully so that you can live according to being the most excellent person that you can be, and helping anyone else that might want to be truly excellent or actually feel stuck, and have that mindset where you really know exactly what you're doing, you can get the results that you want, and you can make sure that you take the action and set your goals. This is a strange noise going past.
Yeah,
So,
in high heels.
in high
Right.
heels. All right.
You see
Clip
that
clop,
often,
clip
yeah.
clop, clip clop.
Oh,
So would that be okay if I went over the basics
Mm.
with you? And what I'd like to see happen is that we have interaction in this, so because these are really, really important. They are the basics of NLP. So, first of all, we're going to talk about themes. So, the first theme is
Empowerment.
empowerment. The second one, we'll just run through the list now, is results versus excuses. Perception is projection. That's a really interesting thought process where I think we talked about it earlier, where what you perceive may be what is coming from you. We talk about the responsibility for change is yours, and we talk about the responsibility of value. We go again into beliefs because that's really important. We've talked about them already in the communication model, and you know, when you've been talking about why you're here, there are some beliefs that you would like to change as well. And talk a bit about the mind-body connection. So, empowerment.
Empowerment. So, we've already talked about the fact that how somebody might filter and how people behave when an external event happens. But if you think about yourselves for a moment, we've already just talked about actually how some of the stuff on your chart is attributed to some of these things that have happened here. And empowerment is really about not just understanding that, but owning that this is what happens and when somebody deals with an external event. So it's about cause and effect. Okay. It's about reasons. Reasons versus excuses.
Results even.
Results,
Yeah.
yes. And actually, if you own what's happened to you and how you deal with your behaviour, actually it makes you really, really empowered. So, what side are you on? A lot of people today talk about Brexit. I'm quite Brexited out, but a lot of people are blaming life, the universe, the dog not going where it should do on Brexit. Okay? But a lot of the time, things happen and people blame other things. So, I'm going to put on the flip chart.
Yep.
Yeah, on the flip chart. Let's go around the room and talk about which side of, or how far of cause and effect you think you're on. So if we go June, on a scale of say 0 to 10, 0 being that you are not at cause, and that you're on an effect side of things, and 10 being totally at cause, where would you say you're at?
Probably. Hang on, which way round were they again?
So 0 is where it's everyone else's fault,
Yeah.
and 10 is where you're totally in
Totally.
charge.
I think I'm probably 6 or 7 other.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can just ask your unconscious mind to pop something into your
Well,
head.
7
'Cause-
was the thing that popped into
Right,
my head
okay.
to start with, so.
Lovely.
3, right?
Yeah, okay. Tell
Six,
me,
6 popped into mind
Yeah.
first, yeah.
So all excellent popper inners of information. So brilliant.
I think I'm probably a 3 as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
5.
Okay. So, yeah. So some of the things that you've got as beliefs will affect whether you're at cause or effect, won't they? Yeah. So our aim in this course is to get you to attend, so we're going to stick this up. And every couple of days we're going to ask you, and it will be moving up as you do the various techniques and work out what's going on and start to piece the bits together. Okay. So the thing is, we either get results or we have excuses. So who's got the biggest excuse here for not getting the results that they want? Was that a hand up going up? I thought I saw a hand start.
I could probably think of quite a few excuses that I've made over time, you know, for not getting things done. I mean, yeah, it's a very, very easy. It's the path of least resistance to basically say, oh, it was this, it was that, and I definitely have done it on a far too often. That's why I'm here to stop doing that.
Yeah. So what sort of things? What sort of excuses have you?
You know, there's always something better to do. There's always something, you know, I can waste my time on something else. So, you know, classic example, doing the VAT return. You know, I'll give you an example. I've got to do it tonight because it's due in today, and it could have been done a month ago. And you know, and it's not that difficult a VAT return either. But you know, when I thought about doing it about 3 weeks ago, and I had the time to do it. I had all the time in the world to sit there, go through everything, and I guess it's probably about an hour's work at the most, if that. And yet I found an excuse not to do it, to go and do something else that I perceive to be more interesting and probably time wasting. So you know, for me, that's a sort of prime example as I'm sitting here happening to me right now.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of, you know, procrastination and trying to push things to one side that I want to stop doing. I want to, you know, I want to be able to touch it and do it rather than touch it, look at it, think about it, leave it, touch it, think it, look about it, and you know, and then that does form a pattern in my life. So that's one example. I could probably think of half a dozen more if I really wanted to.
I think that sometimes I give myself an excuse of looking after myself. So because I've got determination at the top of my values, and I've consciously put self-care in. Sometimes when I really could do with tidying and putting papers together, filing things, doing mileage, whatever, I say to myself, yeah, but I'm just looking after myself, and it would be far better for me to go and sit down by the river or watch a bit of telly. And then the next day comes and I haven't done it, and I think, you know, it is me in charge of that, and I'm fully aware of that.
Yeah.
It is sort of like an excuse that I make. Yeah.
Definitely for me.
It can be a really easy way to sometimes let people down in a gentle way as well, can't it? Because if you say to somebody, oh, I'm sorry, I can't, I'm too busy, or I can't because of this, it's much easier to let somebody down that way than to say, well, sorry, I won't because it's just not a priority for me. You don't want to say that to somebody. So quite often, you know, someone might ask you if you want to go out for dinner and you actually just don't want to go. So I would never say, no, I don't want to, thank you. I'd say, oh, I'm really sorry, I can't make it tonight, maybe another time.
Yeah.
You know, that's
and sometimes the excuses that we have, our unconscious mind will take them on board as though we're sort of talking about ourselves. So I'm far too tired, and you know, or I've got loads of work to do, or if you say to someone, I'm too tired, then your unconscious mind goes, oh, so you're tired, and then you create tiredness as well. So it's quite interesting. Okay, so next one.
Perception is projection. This is possibly one of my favourite ones. So this is basing on the premise that anything that you're saying, feeling, doing, chances are you're looking in the mirror and it's about you.
So if you perceive anger or sadness coming from someone, who was it? We had an example, didn't we, earlier? of someone that you were perceiving something from someone else. Was it you? What was that? I can't remember
I
now.
think it was that I wasn't a priority.
Yes. Okay. So you'll be projecting maybe that you're not a priority, and therefore coming back at you will be you're not a priority. That's very interesting, and one of the pieces of homework that we want you to do tonight is to just think about what are you perceiving from someone else that you might actually be projecting yourself, that maybe you need to put on your charts. Yeah. Anything else about that?
No, I was just going to say that I had tech.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine. There was a friend of mine I thought wasn't getting on so well. And when I raised the complaint about my friend, oh my gosh, and I did not whinge. And when I thought about what exactly I was whinging about, it was something in myself actually. The thing that I was whinging about my friend, was the thing that I wasn't happy about in myself. And that really explains quite a bit of behaviour. So a lot of people, I deal with a lot of relationships, and one of the things that often is said is they do this, they do that, they do the other, blah, blah, blah. And actually, more often than not, they're actually talking about themselves.
Okay, so you can't see anything outside of you that isn't you. How do you feel about that statement? Because we are creating our reality, aren't we? We've got the flip chart over, but we create our reality. And that, everything that's outside of us is actually our reality.
It's a hard pill to swallow.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't taste very nice.
And that's that's what being at cause is all about, is understanding that you create your own reality, really.
But if you swallowed the pill, and actually it puts you in a really, really empowering position, because it means that if there's stuff out there,
You can change it.
exactly.
Well, one thing I wonder is what you were saying about what you perceive what you are, so it comes through. So, and the stuff about that you didn't half whinge. Does this mean that you can't think badly of something or be critical of something? Or is there a way that you can do it in a constructive way?
Yeah, and we'll get to that.
Okay.
Because one of the things that I'm probably skipping ahead, but if I just flip the chart back, I think you've already done it. Way ahead of me. If we look at, I've lost my train of thought now. Oh, the behaviour. All behaviour's got a positive intention. So when you think, if you have something that you're thinking not so positive thoughts about somebody, okay, actually understanding that means that you can take a step back really and say, like I sometimes come across people that do bizarre behaviour, what I consider to be bizarre behaviour, it's not to them, and actually the positive intention for them could be a myriad of things, but all I'm seeing is their behaviour. Knowing the fact that their behaviour's got a positive intention and understanding this, don't necessarily have to like everybody, but I can certainly understand it.
And of course, the bizarre people that you see may have something to do with yourself.
I'm pretty bizarre.
Just so. And what you see in others is often a reflection of yourself, which is what we've just been saying. And of course it works the other way as well, so it's fun to think about because, are they responding to you or are you responding to them?
Is that the reason why, in your social groups you are attracted to people who are kind of similar to yourself?
You can be.
Because I look at kind of my social group of friends and we are broadly very, very similar really. And the people I tend to meet and interact with on a general basis in life, they all tend to be quite sort of similar. And then I'll come across somebody who's, as you say, their behaviour is completely different and and they're interacting with people who are kind of similar to them in their behaviours, and they seem to be attracted to one another, but I'm not attracted to them in any way, and I couldn't see myself.
So I guess
Is
we're
that-
sort of
is that-
heading towards the rapport stuff, which we're going to do tomorrow, but yeah, I mean,
But is that the reason why? Is that kind of perception is projection, is why you project what your perception is, and then that is, you know, attracted by somebody else, and
yeah.
that's why when you communicate you end up being
And
you know,
listen, you know, all of us are perhaps surrounded by people that we're not 100% fond of, whether that's in work or family. But actually understanding that the bits that perhaps you're not so fussed on could be something about yourself you don't like.
Has anyone heard of mirror neurons? I'm not an expert in mirror neurons, but it's the latest thing in neuroscience. So basically we have some neurons in something called the Broca's area in our brain, which is sort of in the prefrontal sort of area of our brain. And when we do something and we see the same person doing the same thing, it fires a whole load of neurons off in that part of our brain, which then increases our understanding of that person and our empathy and our rapport. So it's I don't pretend to be an expert in that, but it's a very interesting area of neuroscience that certainly is worth watching, because it's nice to match up the neuroscience to the NLP, isn't it? Yeah.
What was it called?
Mirror neurons.
Thank you.
I've done a blog on it, which is going out tomorrow. If you're interested. Okay, and what you believe to be true about others, you'll project, and therefore it will become your reality. So, say if you were going into a networking meeting and you're expecting it to be boring, then you will project that and it will become boring. So,
And the reverse is true as well. If you go into a networking meeting and think, this is amazing, they're going to listen to everything I've got to say, they're going to be deeply fascinated and really want to work with me, chances are that that exact thing will happen.
so it's setting your intention. Okay. So, who's in charge? Well, the numbers aren't there, but there's no one 100% in charge here. What is your cause and effect number?
I'm totally in charge.
Good. Yeah, I would say I was sort of somewhere between a 9 and a 10, depending on you know what's going on, but generally a 9 or a 10. And if I'm a 9, then I know why it is, so I probably am still in charge anyway. I just have taken the choice to do something differently. So who controls what you change about yourself, do you think?
Me.
Yeah. So we can sit here and give you all the tools and techniques and all the knowledge and the curiosity and all the learnings that we can, but actually you're the people that are going to make the change in yourself, and you're in charge. So who ensures that the techniques work 100%? Not me, sorry. And if you change just one thing, you'll change lots of things, and on day 3 we'll start doing some work on beliefs, and if you change one belief, you'll probably find that a lot of the beliefs that you have will actually just disappear. And if we find that we're less at cause than we would like, then sometimes that's about boundaries. So sometimes it's quite easy to liaise with people, to have people in your life that actually I'm not going to say put feelings in your head because you do that, but the way that they are, and even though they're doing the best they can and they're not their behaviour, you may then put things into your head. So if you're changing and you're changing in the way that you want, then that's your responsibility, and it's also your responsibility to keep the boundaries so that stays in place. And sometimes I work with people and I give them tasks or which may involve seeing less of particular people, and if they don't do that, then they tend not to keep the change. So it's really important boundaries. It's probably, once you've done work with people, it's really the most important thing.
It really goes along with the whole walking the walk. I mean, when somebody has made a change, it'll have a cascade effect. But it's your responsibility to make sure that you keep doing that change.
Okay, responsibility for value, I'll just click for you.
Thanks. So, yeah, we're going to be giving you a load of tools, and it's up to you to use what you've learnt. The mere fact, in fact, actually, Debs, could I get you to just put the communication model back? Yeah? Because I'm going to be referring to it.
So you probably put it over at the side there, Des. Yeah, if you can reach over the table.
I am tall.
You are powerful. You are fully energised. Feel the energy in the roof.
Yes. So we're going to be giving you a load of tools and a lot of information. It's up to you then to use what you've learned, and that includes communicating with others. Putting in 100%, yeah? No halfway, full on in. Yeah?
Yep.
Responsibility for your results. You're in charge. You're in charge of you, you're in charge of your mind, and therefore you're in charge of your results, and you're in charge of the communication.
And finally, it's your responsibility.
Did I make that way?
Say it in a few different ways, isn't it? It's so important, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this me or you? I can't remember. Yeah. So beliefs. So I don't know if you know, but beliefs are not true. So you might think that they're true, and you might gather all the evidence around you that they are true. But what you're doing is just filtering for those beliefs. Yeah. So there's sort of constructs around which we organise our behaviour. So that's what I mean when I say that they're not actually real. So we behave as though the beliefs are true, and then it becomes that they are true because we believe that they're true, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And whether that's an empowering belief or a limiting belief, they will become more true, if you like. So if we change our beliefs into empowering beliefs and then filter for those empowering beliefs, then things are just going to get totally amazing. Whereas if you believe that you're not good enough, you're not worthy, that whatever it is that you believe, then you're just going to look for the evidence that is out there for that, because you've filtered for it. So you're creating your reality, you're creating your beliefs. Any questions about that? No? Oh yes, and I think it was Henry Ford says whether you believe you can or you believe you or you can't, then you're absolutely right. Okay. So the mind-body connection. So what thoughts do people have about the mind-body connection? Has anyone looked into it? Has anyone researched it? Any views on how your mind affects your body? Do you believe that your mind affects your body?
This is the audience
Yeah.
participation part.
It's building of cells, whether you can, cells are electrical, so if you're feeding the cells negative energy, then you're going to get poor health in the cells.
Yep.
And our thoughts can actually elicit physical changes in our bodies.
Absolutely.
So when I was rock climbing, because I wanted to abseil and I'd forgotten that to come down you must go up first. It was on the side of a cliff. So I'm hanging there by my fingertips and my toes, and in my head I remember thinking, I hate heights, I hate rock climbing, what am I doing here? And the more I thought that, I can't do this, I can't go any further, my palms started to sweat, my breathing rate increased, my knees went to jelly. It was an absolute physical response to what was the self-talk that was happening in here.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, definitely. And the structure of the nervous system, I suppose, is that we tend to think of the nervous system as being our brain, don't we? But in fact, it's our spinal cord, it's our nerves, it's the connections between our nerves. Hormones cross the gaps between our nerves, so it's called the synaptic gap. And our nerves supply all of our cells. So really, when you think about the nervous system, it is all of us, really. Yeah?
A few years ago, I had someone said to me, they were asking there was a few personal trainers sat at a table, and the question was, I've got this terrible pain in my leg, what should I do about it? And there was all, oh, roll it out, do this, that and the other. And I said to her, just thank the pain. And she thanked the pain and it went. She goes, I can't believe it's just disappeared.
Yeah. Pain's a really interesting one, because, you know, if you have chronic pain that's more than 6 weeks old and doesn't appear to have a reason for it, then the likelihood is that the pain is caused by negative emotions which you're not expressing. So on Master Prac we do pain paradigm, where we sort of say to someone, you know, on a level of 0 to 10, how bad is your pain? And they might say a 10, so if they had a bad back or something, then you just ask them what they're feeling right now, and you write that down and you keep going, and as they express their feelings that they're feeling right now, the number of the pain actually goes down and you can actually get rid of that pain. So it's very, very interesting, you know, having been a GP that's had a lot of painkillers, you know, to people over the time, whereas it's probably related to negative emotions. And there's a growing field of epigenetics, which is some part of which says that whatever you're thinking and feeling has a direct effect on all of your cells. So all of your memories are in all of your cells, and if you are thinking negative thoughts or negative feelings, then it can actually change the way that your DNA is expressed in those cells. So I think it's a fascinating subject, that we don't really know what we don't know yet.
It's probably the same as sunburn.
Sorry?
It's probably the same as sunburn.
Sunburn is oh right, okay.
Or you think we put this stuff on our skin that supposedly is meant to protect us, and yet it's full of terrible chemicals.
So yeah, there are a large number of experiments which prove the sort of mind-body connection. So there have been experiments where neurosurgeons have been doing some brain surgery on epileptic patients, and the patients have actually been awake because the brain doesn't actually have any pain sensors. So as long as you've anaesthetised the bit of skull that you go through, you can actually probe the brain to see what effect it has. And people tend to get like a really vivid version of their sort of 4th birthday party. Yeah, and when they go back and check that with their parents, that's actually what happened.
I remember mine. It was funny that I remember it exactly. I hated losing at any games, and I remember I was on the stairs crying because my party was going on in the lounge, and I was losing, and I didn't want to take part because I was losing.
Oh, right.
I remember it really clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Hated losing.
and just from the
Just didn't take
physiological
part.
structural connection, you know, having stimulated the brain, that's then come up with that memory.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. And has anyone heard about the heart transplants, where you actually get a sort of almost a personality transplant, or you know, someone that hated curry before and then had a heart transplant and then turns out to love curry, or someone that liked dogs and didn't like cats now likes cats and didn't like dogs, and you know, that's because of all the connections inside, and it's fascinating stuff, isn't it?
Is that just with hearts, or is that with any
I
with
think
other organs?
with any other organs it would be, yeah. And you know, there's been experiments where people have put a rat in a maze and they've had difficulty finding the way out, and then they've found their way out. Then and this is not particularly pleasant, but it's quite a long time ago, they removed half of that rat's brain, put it into the maze, and they still found their way out. Then they removed the next quarter of the brain, and then finally the whole brain, and actually the rats were able to run out of the maze without any actual brain cells, meaning that actually those memories were in other parts of that rat as well.
That's horrific, isn't it?
That's
It is a bit,
fascinating.
sorry, yeah. It's a bit of a negative rat, but you know, the experiment was done, and it does prove that your memories are in other parts of your body other than your brain. So any questions about those themes? Okay. So, okay. Was I going to do the first one, or were you? We did decide.
I know.
I've forgotten.
I just-
Probably my little toe has the memory
Yeah,
somewhere.
probably.
Yeah.
So these are presuppositions, and they're things that we would like you to take on to help understand and communicate. So we've already talked about the communication model, and we've already talked about how people filtrate information coming in. So respecting other people's model of the world, because as I said before, we'll all have different beliefs, attitudes, decisions. The way that we process information will be absolutely different. We'll all have different memories, we'll all have different values.
So that includes the less, what's the word? So maybe people like Hitler and Saddam Hussein have their own model of the world, which they have created for themselves, but also been influenced by their memories, their experiences, their values, their beliefs that perhaps they've got from their parents and people around them, and they actually have then a behaviour that's just come from their model of the world. And how do you feel about respecting Hitler's model of the world?
I've been to Auschwitz and it's horrible.
But I take your point, but all you've got there is the behaviour.
Okay, so you know, there's lots of politics going. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think the thing that struck me is I get the piece about you know, your background and your experiences will shape your model of the world and how you approach it. I guess there's just something for me in actually to carry out to the nth degree of what he did. Is there not something in his humanness that would cause you to think, is this right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because they don't
it just
fit,
causes a
doesn't
bit of
fit
a
with ours,
conflict
does it?
for me.
It doesn't fit with ours,
That's
definitely.
right down in values level. That's right down in values level.
Yeah.
So isn't it?
Yeah.
That's not to say that one has to condone the behaviour
No, no.
at all.
I get
Just
that
saying
bit about
that's how he's
separating
got
it,
that.
but I just, yeah, I guess it really causes me to question, because I think that fundamentally in human beings there's something deep about our humanity, and so how you could override that to flatten people, I don't know.
Well, I think it's a sort of probably a discussion for another day, because that's probably quite a long discussion,
Yeah.
isn't it? And it'd be interesting to research as to whether there is that human sort of element that is overridden. I'm not aware of any research myself, but I'll go and have a look for that. Don't know if anyone else has got any views on that. It's like my mother is sort of fairly far left in terms of her political preferences, and she believes that anyone that votes for Labour and has a dog, they're the good people in the world, and everyone else isn't. No. It's just interesting, isn't it? You know, sometimes I go up there, and sometimes that's a bit of a boundary for me in terms of her beliefs and her rules. But she's 91, and you know, that's about me respecting her model of the world. So that's an interesting one. Behaviour and change are to be evaluated in terms of context and ecology. So what is a behaviour in a particular context, or the ecology, or you know, the sort of rightness in people's minds. It will be different in different contexts. So if someone was shouting at someone and making them cry, or just making them go away, that's not okay in some contexts, but it might be in other contexts where they might be in danger and they're just shouting, get out of here, and yeah.
So resistance in a client is a lack of rapport. Now, we've all had people that we don't get along with in a workplace. We might have people around us that we don't actually like. And the fact of life is that's going to happen. But if you can communicate and be in rapport with somebody, then actually you're going to get on. And that's not to say that you still have to like them, but you have to be like them. With
So
me.
yeah, so have you had any clients that have been resistant, that you've had to take a step back and work at that rapport?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a client very recently who was very, very anxious, and when they got anxious, then their behaviour was less than helpful. And it was no point me saying to them, look, just calm down. Ever had that experience?
Oh, so annoying.
That's the worst thing to say.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
It makes me worse.
So, with my communication and being in rapport, I match that. This person doesn't think that it's a successful business relationship, and the client is a very, very successful one. But yeah, I've had to radically change my behaviour and the way that I communicate with them to make sure that this is not a resistant client.
Either that or don't work with the person, I guess.
Boundaries.
Boundaries, yeah. Okay, so people are not their behaviour. We've said that a few times today. So what you see someone actually doing is not their personality, it's not their identity. We don't know what their model of the world is at that time. We might mind read about what's going on, but we might get that wrong. And, you know, might go into work one day and someone will be very cross and be stomping around, and we go, oh, they're just in a bad mood. But you know, and they're always in a bad mood, that's them. You might hear people saying, but actually we don't know what's going on in that person's model of the world. They might, you know, have lost, that's popped into my mind, lost the cat, or someone's died, or they've just had a big row, or these things happen, don't they? And people come out with a behaviour as a result of that is not them. And that enables us to forgive people. Yeah.
So everyone is doing the best they can with the resources that they have available. I swear I'm going to have this as my epitaph. Everyone's doing the best they can with the resources they have available. Because sometimes that can be quite difficult, especially when all you see is that behaviour. So what do people think about that? Is that something that you'd accept?
I think the majority of people probably don't accept that. It's quite a difficult one, I think, to swallow. You know, if you think of some extreme examples like Hitler, or you know, other things that are perhaps happening in the world and in the way people are behaving, I think that's, you know, is quite a difficult one to swallow, for me anyway. To accept that, you know, that behaviour of somebody which is really counter to all the behaviours and values that you have as a person.
So respect
accept that they're doing the best that they can with the resources they have available. But I, you know, I think that it's the resources they have available, but then that kind of qualifies all of that.
Because that's their values, beliefs, memories.
Exactly, yeah. It's that, and that's the resources that they have, those people have. And that's the forgiveness element is by qualifying it with that statement, I guess.
We had somebody on the last course who was an ex-prison officer, didn't we? And he worked with offenders. And from that point of view, from his point of view, all that anybody else would see, or certainly all the jury would see, would be their behaviour. But they were just doing the best they can with the resources they have available.
We got broken into in March, a week after we moved into our house. While we were in the house, and they stole the car, and they stole my wallet and some money and power tools, and nobody was hurt, nothing significant. And you know, I did feel quite forgiving, because I, you know, eventually saw a picture of this guy. He got arrested. Went back to jail. But there was a part of me that did think, you know, if only he had another opportunity to take another path in life, I'm sure that he would have done. And that's
come on an NLP course.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just, it's, you know, you don't know, do you?
No, because people sometimes have these behaviours that get them into a lot of bother from the system.
Because those are the resources they have available, so they don't know any difference.
There's lots of people that turned their lives around as a result as well.
And from, you know, so I didn't feel that much animosity towards that guy. Maybe initially when it first happened, after a few days or whatever, it turned to kind of almost sadness and, you know, feeling sorry for them. So I can resonate with it. I guess it's the extreme examples.
But even in the extreme examples, that person is doing the best they can with the available resources.
They just haven't got all the resources that they have inside them, and they're not using them all, potentially. So calibrate on behaviour. Behaviour is the thing that you see. So, you know, when you're making changes, when you're communicating with people, they may change, their behaviour will change, because that's the only thing that you can see, because actually it's the end point of everyone's filtering system.
And the map is not the territory. We've all been to a restaurant, right? Yeah. And we've all seen, we've read the menu, And the way that the dishes sound, they can sound pretty nice, huh? But actually, that what you are reading isn't actually the dessert, or isn't actually the starter or the main course. They're just the words that the chef has used to write about such fantastic things, aren't they? So if you think about that in respect of your life, it goes back to that, you create your own reality.
So you've got all this amount of information coming in. You can only deal with a certain amount. So, you know, the territory is all that's coming in, and the map is what you actually end up with. I think your birdseed analogy is really good, Deb. Just tell people what that is for the map. Read through.
It's part of explaining the NLP communication model.
Yeah.
So the birds, I get a box of birdseed, and that represents the, did you say 4 million?
Yeah.
4 million
4
bits
million,
per
maybe
second
more.
Of information that goes in. And so I ask somebody to stand opposite me and I throw them the birdseed and say, catch that. And obviously you won't catch a handful, which represents the 126 bits per second. That is,
So the chunks and chunks, isn't it?
yeah.
So that's the map.
So
Bit they
that's the,
catch, but the rest is the territory that
yeah.
you've just filtered.
yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
I did start off with those squishy polystyrene balls because
Oh,
my
yeah.
brother-in-law has them at his factory. But that was a nightmare to clean up. So I've gone to birdseed now because it's easier.
So you're in charge of your mind and therefore your results. I think all the things that we've talked about so far about being at cause, and actually we are the only people that do things within our neurology. So therefore you're in charge of your results, whether you like them or not.
People have all the resources they need to succeed and achieve their desired outcomes. How's that?
Seems a little bit in conflict with everybody is doing the best they can with the resources they have available to them.
I think the word is resources available. Not everybody is going to be aware that they have all of those resources. You're on an NLP practitioner course. So by the mere fact that you're on here, you will become much more aware of the resources you have available. At the moment, it might have even shifted, but the stuff that you've got on the charts, we would say actually you've got all the resources you need to have the successful outcome.
Just weren't aware of them.
Sorry?
Just before maybe you weren't aware of them.
Exactly.
And all procedures should increase wholeness. So we're born whole. And things happen to us and we get limiting decisions, phobias, parts, multiple personalities, and we become unwhole. And that's, I'm not talking about you having those things, but people can have those things. And yeah, so it's just about increasing wholeness. So anything that we do with someone should increase that wholeness rather than on the opposite. Okay.
There is only feedback.
So no such thing as failure.
Exactly. Just took the words right out of my mouth.
So yeah. How do people feel about failure? Do you believe there is such thing as failure? Or is that just a construct that we use?
It's a construct we've used to define certain things that happen.
And I think a lot of the things that come from our past, the way we've been told we failed or we haven't done well enough, rather than asking what we've learned and how we can take that forward.
I guess in the past, when I've been punched in the face, I realised that my block was a failure.
Yeah.
So that wasn't...
Your block was a...
The blocking
I
of the
see.
punch was a failure. That's why I got punched in the face.
But you learned.
Yeah.
Just do it in a different place next time.
Yeah.
It just wasn't good enough.
You need to hit them before they finish hitting you, yeah.
Can I just say something on that one? That this is a big one that I use with teenagers, because very often in schools and the language that we use with kids is about failure, and it might not be using the word failure, but quite often it is. And I went into a school and did a training, and I just finished doing what I was doing in assembly, and the head of learning and development said, right, and you'll all be getting your mock exam results back, so any of you that have drastically failed everything, then you'll be doing X, Y and Z, and I went, this is a mock exam, so this is the time where you find out where your gaps in your subject knowledge is. So go and find out about where your gaps are. So let's take failure out of it. Your result is your feedback. But a lot of that comes from the language that is used in school, especially.
But it's also, it's that thing, isn't it, that actually we're almost conditioned, and we condition ourselves from very young to get 10 out of 10. And anything not 10 out of 10 is...
Is that what happened to you?
Probably.
Yeah, I've worked with quite a few clients that perhaps have got 9.5 out of 10, and their parents have said, where's the other 0.5%, and that's led to all sorts of problems later in life around needing to be perfect, needing to please people, and not being happy with the level that they've achieved, which is probably quite high. So the meaning of your communication is the response you get. So when you talk to people, when you either verbal or non-verbal communication, you get a result coming back. And if it's not what you want, then you need to tweak the way that you communicate. So,
is that resonating?
I'm just remembering a telephone call with a complainant.
Yeah.
And I said something and got a reaction and was a bit, and then had to go back in. That doesn't sound like what I meant. What I meant was, and had to reframe
because everyone's
the conversation,
got a different model of
because the
world.
reaction back wasn't what should have come back from that comment.
Because they have their own values, beliefs,
Well, it's their
experiences, isn't
their
it?
filters and their reception of what you've just said.
Yeah. So to be at cause, work on communication and being flexible with your communication so that you get the result that you do want.
So the law of requisite variety, so the system or the person with the most flexibility of behaviour will be in charge of the system. So that simply means that you had to change, didn't you? You had to change how you communicated.
Yeah.
And actually, if you change your communication, then you drive the results, you drive the outcome. How's that?
Cool.
And
Ties in with that thing about the person who asks the questions is in control.
Well, I think it's more about having the flexibility in your behaviour. Like I said earlier, we've all got people that we perhaps don't get along with. That could be friends, family, people that we work with. And sometimes you think, do they not get it? How can how can I get the point across? But actually, if you change the way that you communicate, that will change the outcome.
It's
Switch the two touch.
quite empowering because when I first heard that, I almost thought the fact that you have to be flexible, it almost feels like you're bending to suit somebody else, and it almost feels like a bit of a weakness, but actually it's not. It's a really empowering tool to be able to have.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, not what people would generally think, I guess, unless you learn this sort of thing. So. And all procedures should be designed to increase choice. So, choice in your direction, choice in your future, choice in how you behave, choice in how you communicate. And, you know, if you've got choices, you're at cause.
And actually having choice, the mere presence of having a choice makes it a very empowering thing to do. So all that we'll be teaching you on the course will absolutely be designed to increase your choice. And who makes those decisions and choices?
Okay, so let's have a break, shall we? Because it's been quite a long session, and then we'll go into the prime directives of your unconscious mind. So just a 10-minute break, be fine to...
Does anyone mind if I open that door and maybe just refresh
Yeah,
the
no,
air?
that'd be, yeah. So, any questions that have come up during the break about your themes or the presuppositions, the assumptions we'd like you to adopt? No, I can see that you've all been really chilled and relaxed out there, and probably not talking about presuppositions, is that right?
I'm still getting to know what that
What that
prepossession
word means,
Yeah.
Yeah,
terminology.
so sort of like
yes.
assumptions,
Yeah.
really, that,
Yes.
you know, if we assume these things and these presuppositions, then life gets a lot easier, and interactions and communication gets a lot easier. Yeah, or even easy. Okay, so your unconscious mind. So your unconscious mind works by a set of rules, really, and we call them prime directives. And prime directives sounds a bit Star Trek-y, doesn't it? Is anyone a Star Trek-y sort of person? A prime directives of the unconscious mind. As we zoom off to planet Zog or whatever. Yeah, so it's really important to know about all of these. So they store, your unconscious mind stores all your memories. So even we were talking about the epileptic person that had that 4th birthday party stored. Talk about rats that have their memories in all of their cells, so that when they no longer have what we consider normally to be the unconscious mind, they still function. And you know, you might be walking around the park and something will pop into your mind which is a memory from way ago, and you think, well, where's that come from? But it might be useful. So it stores all of your memories, so consciously we only have a small proportion of them, but they are there.
It's the domain of all your emotions. So all your hurt, anger, fear, sadness, guilt, being the 5 major emotions, and then other emotions tend to be subsets of those major emotions. So shame, embarrassment, regret.
Disappointment, anxiety, yeah.
So all of that will be held at your unconscious mind.
So you can't consciously get sad, really, can you? It's something triggers and you run something in your head and then you get sad. Because you can't go, I'm going to be really sad right now. Well, it might work, but it's more difficult. It's an unconscious mind process. Yeah. So organises all of your memories. So your timeline. So emotions get stored temporarily on your timeline. So Michaela's just talked about the anger, sadness, fear, hurt and guilt. They'll all have like a storage system on your timeline, however your timeline looks, and we'll be doing that on day 7. Or by subject, so less on the timeline but still connected by subjects.
And it represses memories with unresolved negative emotions. So why would it do that? Well, people need to move forward, do the things that they do, but actually the unresolved negative emotions, when something happens, it's possible for somebody to install either a limiting decision, a conflict, a phobia, and it's there to protect you. Your unconscious mind is there to protect you.
You hear about people shutting things away in boxes and closing the lid, or putting things to the back of their mind, or we've even had people lock things in a wardrobe. The trouble is that the people tend to find the keys to these things. Lids comes off and things move from the back of your mind to the front of your mind very easily, and it's one of the great things about timeline really, is that you can get rid of all those negative emotions without having to lock them away or throw them in the river or burn them. They just go. So that's a really cool plus for timeline. Represents repressed memories for resolution, so I guess that's why people come for coaching, potentially why people come on courses. They've had enough. You know, your unconscious mind keeps popping things into your conscious awareness, and you finding it really, people find it really difficult to deal with those things, and therefore get some help.
So it may keep the repressed memories repressed to protect you.
There's a spelling error there.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's all about protection, isn't it? And, you know, the reason that people get stuck, the reason that people have blocks and develop beliefs and have a lot of negative chatter going on, it's all about making sure you don't do anything that the unconscious mind thinks is going to harm you.
And somebody may have gone through trauma, but actually will have a complete block about that trauma, almost as, and they'll say, I've erased it from my memory. It hasn't. It's just been repressed by the unconscious mind to protect.
So runs your body. So blinking, breathing, kidneys, your bowel movements, growing your skin, growing your nails, growing your hair, and we don't do any of that consciously, do we? And you know, even when you think about lifting up your arm, that takes hundreds of muscles, and if you did that on a conscious basis, then you wouldn't, you know, you'd be there all day just lifting your arm upwards. Your unconscious mind just does it for you.
And it has the blueprint of a body that is now and of your body in perfect health. So, before when we were talking about themes, and we were saying, and presuppositions, and we were saying that all procedures are designed to make you whole, well, people are born with a perfect blueprint of health.
And using timeline, we can actually get that blueprint back on hypnosis, which is really cool. We've talked about it preserving your body. That's the main prime directive of your unconscious mind, is about preserving your body.
And it follows the moral code that you were taught and accepted. So throughout your childhood, growing up, you'll have had a moral code that you follow.
And that's where conflicts come in, when you want to do your own thing. You have got this moral code as well. So security versus freedom is quite a common one. So you've been brought up perhaps in a household where money's been a bit tight, and you know your parents have always watched the pennies, and you want to be secure, but you also want to be free to live the life that you want to, and sometimes that's in conflict and ends up as a bit of a parts conflict. Wants to serve and follow instructions from your conscious mind, really, really important, because your unconscious mind's generally a bit lazy. You know, one of the rules is that it takes, you know, looks for the least effort way. So if you say you want more money and you don't specify the amount of money, then your unconscious mind will filter for a 10p on the pavement. Whereas if you're really specific, then it knows precisely what to do. And one of the reasons for anxiety is that your unconscious mind is in a bit of a whirl because it doesn't really know where it's going. It's got a lot of things going on in terms of beliefs and conflicts, and that's why people get stuck. And you know, you're going to learn all the techniques to resolve those, so that's really cool.
So it receives all information from your senses, filters it, and passes the remaining perceptions to your conscious mind. If we just think of proportions for a moment, your conscious mind is really tiny. And that's why it can only really hold so many bits of information in single figures. But your unconscious mind is massive. Your unconscious mind is this room, the next room, all of the grounds, all of Wales. Could I get bigger than that?
Possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the communication model on how you filter that.
It's responsible for energy in your body. So when we did the, what would you describe that as? Is that a chi ball?
It's the chi ball exercise, yeah.
So, you know, when we were doing that, we created some energy which we felt, and that was done with our unconscious mind.
Maintains all of your instincts and generates habits. Now that's good and bad, because somebody can install a really good habit, and I suspect people along the way, somebody has installed perhaps not so good habits. But it keeps, again, it's about protection. I mean, if a tiger was to come in through that door now, I'd be out. I don't know about you lot, but I'd be out quicker than I could get to the end of the sentence.
It requires repetition for a new habit to be installed.
And it wants to continually seek more and more.
Again, that's a sort of bit of a basis for addictions as well, because if you do something or you take a drug or alcohol that either calms you down or gives you a bit of a buzz, then your unconscious mind's going to go, ooh, that was nice. And it would, you know, really wants to do that more and more. Okay. Also useful in the sense, you know, of creating ideas and possibilities and choices which may or may not be useful. Certainly my temptation to follow lots of new ideas can be unuseful. You just need to have a chat with my unconscious mind to perhaps do a bit of focusing until I get my goals and then have another look.
Works best as a whole integrated unit. So what we're doing is we're knowing how to communicate for your conscious mind to your unconscious mind. And by doing that, mind-body connection, just creating wholeness.
Uses and responds to symbols, so be interested to see what symbols you have. So I'm going to ask you to go around and think of a symbol, ask your unconscious mind for a symbol for yes. Go. What comes in? Heart.
Tick.
Debbie.
Heart came into my mind as well.
What about you, Cara?
A tick.
Tick.
Yeah.
So we've all got different symbols in our unconscious mind for yes. And you know, when you know, your unconscious mind does everything symbolically really, and when you do time running, and you go back and you might get some content in your memories or you might not, but if you do, and you go back to a time when you were 2, the first root cause for an emotion, your unconscious mind will probably put you in a cot or on a bike or something, because that's what your unconscious mind has as a symbol for that.
And it takes everything personally. So have you ever had an experience where somebody on another table, for example, in a restaurant has been talking, and you could swear it was about you? Yeah. Your unconscious mind takes everything personally.
Yep. I was in Sainsbury's once, and someone about 4 back in the queue said to me, if she doesn't stop working so hard, she'll kill herself. And in my dream that night, I had a dream of being in a voluntary euthanasia queue, and that's probably come directly from my unconscious mind going, oh, that's about you. So it's slightly amusing, but luckily I got out of it, so that's fine.
And it always follows the path of least the path of least resistance, least effort.
Yeah.
So it kind of will cop out, take the easy way out. So if you said to yourself, well, I want more money, and found 10 pence, box ticked. It's one of the reasons you have to be very, very specific when giving your unconscious mind instructions. Because if you don't, it'll cop out, take the easy way. As far as you're concerned, that's the box ticked.
And doesn't process negatives. So those of you that've got kids, grandkids, you say to a kid, don't cross the road, they'll cross the road and then put the don't in. Because after all, if we ask you to think of don't think of a blue tree, what do you have to do in order to not think about it? You have to actually get that picture up of the blue tree. So you probably catch yourself doing these things and putting the negatives in, whereas if we just switch it around and use the positives, our mind is a lot clearer and does the things that we want it to do rather than things that we don't. Has anyone got any examples of where they say don't do this or don't do that?
Well, I know when I've been to a restaurant and they bring a hot dish up and say, oh, don't touch it. I pretended to go.
Yeah.
And I figured it would be much better to say, touch that if you want a burnt hand.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about how you use your language, really, isn't it? It's really important.
Say it as you want it.
Mm?
Say it as you want it.
Exactly. So, anyone got any questions on that? Anyone relate any of those to themselves?
Any dots being joined? Yeah.
Cool. One of the things that I meant to do when we were talking about the mind-body connection is to just do a little experiment with you all. So if you could all stand up, that'd be really good. Just make sure I don't drop my mic. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes. Okay. And I want you to put your hands straight out in front of you. And I want you to turn your right hand over so that it's facing upwards. Okay. And in that right hand, I want you to imagine that you've got a really, really heavy book, a bit like one of those Encyclopedia Britannicas. So it's sort of feeling really heavy and your muscles are starting to shake and it's getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And on your left hand, you have a balloon that's tied to your wrist, and the balloon goes higher and your wrist goes higher and higher, really high, and at the same time your right hand has another book on there. Let's put another book and just feel how heavy that book is. It's really, really, really heavy, and really heavy, and it's going down towards the ground because you can hardly hold it up. And the left hand, it's going higher and higher as those balloons, those helium balloons, just go higher and higher towards the ceiling. Okay, and if you just open your eyes and have a look at your hands. So I want to let you into a little secret. There is no book and there is no balloon. And actually that your mind did that for you. So it's very, very powerful. So it basically boils down to that all learning behaviour and change is done at an unconscious level. So very, very powerful, really. You know, go back over these things tonight and just make sure that you've got them all, you know, in your conscious mind as well as your unconscious mind, and just decide to adopt the themes, the assumptions, the presuppositions, and understand the way that the unconscious mind works in terms of the prime directives. And I think it's useful to talk about principles for success, because really what we're doing on this course is making sure that you get the success that you want to get. So the principles for success are about knowing your outcomes. So we have a quick break in a minute, but then we're going to look at compelling outcomes or goals, so that you've got something to walk and work towards. And of course, if you know your outcomes, but you just sit around and do nothing, then you're not actually going to get them, are you? So you need to actually take some action and get rid of any of the things that are in the way, that are stopping you from taking action and procrastinating. Have sensory acuity. So sensory acuity is noticing those micro changes in yourself or in other people. And if we notice those changes, then we can find out whether we're heading towards our goals and taking the right action. Because if we detect with our sensory acuity that it doesn't feel very good, or we're not heading in the right direction, then we'll know that. And that's sort of, we know that in ourselves, and we can see it in other people, and it's almost part of that gut instinct. Have behavioural flexibility. So if something's not working, do it a different way, and you'll be in charge of the system, and you'll be in charge of your choices and the cause, and operate from a physiology and a psychology of excellence. And I guess that's where you come in as well, Nigel, isn't it? So your body, your mind, it's all in tune, it's all aligned, it's all one, because we're off to go and get that goal. And it's really, really important. Okay, so any questions about that? So what else will be useful for you as you work through the course? Well, I guess it's about, your attitude. So attitude are a combination of your beliefs and values. Some curiosity, so, I wonder what would happen if I did this instead of that, or how could I help that other person in a different way. And then knowledge, so the whole of the course is going to be about giving you knowledge about techniques and building on the sort of presuppositions, prime directives, and what's the first one? Themes of NLP. And every day you're going to learn new things. So let's have a 5-minute break, because we're going to change subject now. And we're going to talk about goals. Okay, so let's have a 5-minute break and we'll get back to that. Okay, so you've all heard of goals, right? Has anyone heard Michaela walking down the corridor?
Yeah.
I've seen her as well.
So would you be interested in learning a way to set some really compelling goals?
Oh yes.
Yeah. It would be useful to be able to work with clients or friends as well as yourself and get them setting goals. So I can see you're really excited. Well, I was excited yesterday about my garden. So we've lived there for 12 years now, and when we first moved there, it was a sewage works in the garden, so we just hired a bit of land next to the sewage works, which were probably about 50 years old and hadn't been used for 50 years, so it was just a piece of land. And we gradually acquired the garden, and we just got quite excited, and over the 12 years we've really made some big changes. So we bought that piece of land. I've put a time travel machine in the garden. Simon, losing my words now. As Simon has seen, put a log cabin up, just generally grassed over the lawn, put some chickens in, and there were loads of trees in the back of the bit by the chickens, which was where the old sewage works were, and they were sort of like ash trees that were saplings, and I always had this feeling that I really wanted to do something with this piece of land. It's probably one of my unconscious mind next great idea things, but it's been going on for 12 years now. So I went down there with Rick about 6 months ago and thought, this is the next project, but what do we actually want to do in it? Maybe we want to put a training room, I thought, would be good. Do we want to get an even bigger garden? Do we want to have goats or llamas, or what do we actually want to do? But the thing is that I couldn't make any decisions because, it was just a bit of a mess really. The chicken run was okay and we had some nicely lined up vegetables, but the bit behind it was full of balsam, was full of knotweed and ash stumps, and we started to cut bits down, but I still couldn't actually see what it was I was heading for. And I went to networking and I came across a chap who in fact Michaela's met, called Chris Carpenter, who may be coming in November actually, because he's really interested in all of this, and I bumped into him in Abergavenny, and do you know what, he does landscape gardening, and I thought, do you know what, here is the answer to what I really need so that I can decide what to do. And while I was thinking about all this, I was sitting in the garden. We've got one of these swing benches, and I was sitting down by the river and looking up at the sky, had a cup of coffee, a book, I was just chilling out. All of a sudden it got really, really cold, and I looked up at the sky. It was quite black, sort of black clouds. And I'd heard on the radio that, there was going to be a storm. And I thought, here it comes. And sometimes, because we've got a river running down the bottom of the garden, sometimes I get canoeists sort of just paddling past, ever so serenely, avoiding all the rocks that are just where I sit. Well, not just where I sit, but in the river by where I sit. And I thought, let's hope that there aren't going to be anyone trying to paddle down the river, because what happens with the river, and Chris will be able to tell you, this is the River Llindy, it gets quite deep and quite fast flowing, and in fact some of the times some of my clients throw things in there that they don't actually want, so it goes all the way down to Bridgend, and I don't think I'd like to live in Bridgend actually, because there's an awful lot of things that you wouldn't really want in your head that are lurking around in the river. And I was looking up and I heard a shout, "Way!" And I looked up and I could see a sort of paddle coming down. I could see this canoe, and the speed of the river was amazing. I mean, it was just going shh like that. Sometimes I have these little daydreams about what would I do if I saw, something in that. What would I actually do? But that's just me. So I saw this canoe coming down, and I sort of watched, and I thought, I don't know if they know that there's a bit of a bump here, and then rocks, because it was just completely covered and you couldn't actually see it. And they came down, and all of a sudden, they gave a great big shout, their paddles went up in the air, and they disappeared. And I could see a little wiggle of a paddle going on. And is anyone interested in horse jumping? I used to go to Hickstead, well I think I went once actually when I was about 10. Anyone got horses or like horse riding? Very sensible. I've had horses, I sort of have the scars to show it. So I was quite interested in David Broom. I don't know if anyone's heard of David Broom. Oh, yeah, cool. And also the, the famous show jumper family. What were they called? I can't remember what they're called. Can you remember what they're called? The Whitakers.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the Whitakers? So there's Whitaker Senior or something like that, and the Whitaker Junior. And I was there and I was watching the show jumping, and they had a really big sort of Grand Prix on. I'd watched a few other things earlier on in the day where there were little kids going in and out of poles on their ponies and whisking the polo, playing polo and just general gymkhana stuff, but this was the really serious thing. And I watched the first round, and there were only 3 left in the next round. And I thought, I just wonder how they're going to play this. Because you could go very, very fast, or you could go very slowly and you could still win, couldn't you? So one of the Whitaker Senior, set off, and he went really, really fast. I mean, there were some jumps that were huge. I don't know if you've ever been to a show jumping event or a 3-day event, but some of these things are up here and sort of, and they're more rider scarers than horse scarers. So he went very, very fast, and he actually got 2 fences down. And then David Broom, he decided to go sort of medium speed. And, there were just 1 or 2 turns where his horse wasn't sort of quite lined up right, and he wasn't able to stretch over the fence, and he knocked 1 down. And then Junior Whitaker went. And you could see him calming his horse down and knowing where he was going and knowing the exact speed that he needed to go. And he set off. So, goals, the importance of goal setting. How important do you feel that goal setting is?
Very.
You have to say that. So it's really interesting because there was an experiment done in the Harvard Business School a while ago, which they just looked at all the business graduates and they followed them up over the next 10 years, and what they found, to cut a long story short, is that people that had just goals in their head did a certain amount of business. People who actually had goals in their head and wrote them down did 10 times the amount of business from a monetary perspective as those that just had them in their head. And there were a group of people that had no goals at all, and they didn't really have any success at all in business. So it's one of the famous studies that people talk about in terms of the importance of setting goals. And I suppose, we've talked a lot about today about anxiety and, how this stuff goes round and round in your head. And I think if I'm right in saying that, some of you could do with setting some really compelling goals, so that gets rid of the anxiety, so that gets rid of any doubt about yourself, and you actually take the action and follow those 5 principles of success. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that when I set goals, it all comes true, and when I don't, then it doesn't. So, have you heard of SMART goals? Okay, so there's new ways of looking at SMART goals. So, have you heard has anyone not heard of SMART goals? Please say no. You've heard of them. You've heard of SMART goals, Karen?
Yeah,
Yeah,
use
yeah.
them all the time.
Cool. So
Did you say you haven't?
you haven't heard of SMART goals. So you know, there are you know, SMART goals have been around for many years now, and it's an acronym for how to set goals. And NLP just takes it a little bit further. So it's an SMART. So in the sort of pre-NLP days, pre-compelling goal-setting days, people used to just say, we'll make them really specific. But NLP is also added in simple. So, you know, that's about keeping it simple rather than clogging up your brain with lots of information. The M is about measurable. So how are we going to know when we've actually got that goal? How are we going to measure our progress on that goal? And NLP is added in meaningful. Because you can have goals that are specific and measurable, but they don't mean anything to you. So you really don't feel motivated by them at all. So meaningful is a really important part of goals, of compelling goal setting. A is achievable. So the old system, it would be about it being achievable, but we've also added in all areas of your life and also as if now. So it's almost like we're popping ourselves into the future so that it's happening now, even though it might be 6 months down the line. And it needs to be, in order to be really compelling, it needs to be all areas of your life. So sometimes people will set business goals and forget how important that balance is potentially between them and other areas of their life, their fitness, their health, their relationships, their leisure time. So it really needs to be all areas of your life. R is realistic, but also responsible or ecological. So responsible or ecological is really about it being okay in your model of the world. So if I decided I wanted to go to Australia and coach for 6 months every year, and Rick was working doing something else, then that wouldn't be an ecological goal for me because I wouldn't want to do it. It may be someone else's goal, something that people think I should do, but it wouldn't be ecological for me. And T is timed and also towards. So we've already talked today about whether we're facing the thing that we don't want or we're going towards the thing that we do want. And in compelling goal setting, we need to go for the thing that we do want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go through the keys to the achievable outcomes with you.
When you say towards, you're meaning positively framed.
Yes, positively framed, yeah.
I want this as opposed to
I don't want that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a moment you're going to be setting a goal, you're going to be working individually and start to set a goal which you can work on later on tonight as well. And it's important that you tick all the keys to the achievable outcomes so that the goal is really compelling. So So when you write a goal, which covers all of the things that are in the SMART goals, it needs to be also positive, so that's the towards. You need to think about what present situation you're in, so where you're starting from, so you associate yourself into, right, I'm here and I'm going there. You need to specify the outcome, so that is in terms of what precisely is it you want. We've already talked about needing to be specific for the unconscious mind to focus on what it is that you really want. We also need to specify the outcome in terms of what you'll be able to see, what you can hear, what you can feel, and what you might be saying to yourself. So it's engaging all of your senses in this compelling goal. And specifying the evidence procedure. So how will you know when you've got it? So if you've got a monetary goal, maybe you'll be looking at your bank statement, or you go off on holiday, or something that will evidence that you've actually got that goal. Then is it desirable? So this is about being ecological, so it sort of goes with this one really. So is it something you really want, or is it something that other people want for you? Is it self-initiated and maintained? So we can set goals, and we might say, well, me and my business partner will have earned X thousand pounds, or are earning X thousand pounds, but that is not self-initiated or self-maintained, because you need your business partner there to actually do that. So it's about just you. So if you've got any relationship goals, you can't change other people. All you can do is change yourself. So it's about what you want from a relationship, not how you're going to get that with another person. Is it appropriately contextualised? That means, when, how, where, what resources are needed. So have a think about whether you've ever done this before, whether you know anyone else that's done it. So what resources do you think you might need to get it? And then, is it ecological? So we've already explained that. So ecological is about being okay in your model of the world. So all of these need to be included in your goal, and I'm going to be asking to write a goal in a minute, which is going to be perhaps a page, page and a half, 2 pages long, because you need to cover all of these, and it needs to be really compelling and really in your mind, and very, very motivating. So these are in your manuals on, I think it's about page 11, and there's a little bit more detail there. So what I want you to do, and I'll put this back in a minute, is I want you to say it is the 6th of November 2020. So we're going to go for a year's goal. Okay.
September.
Yes. Did I say November?
Yes.
I will get there. So it is the 6th of September 2020, and I am. So what I want you to do is write a sort of story, a description that involves all of the keys to the achievable outcomes. And this is about you being in the future. So it's not I will or anything, it is about you being in the future, because your unconscious mind will go, I've already got that, and it'll go filtering for that. Okay? We've all got that slightly confusing date written down. Mm-hmm. So it's a year from now, basically, and I am. And I'll just read you from the manual. There's an example of a well-written goal written by an NLP practitioner in 2012, and she's writing it as if it's 2015 when she wants to achieve the goal. And it's written in accordance with these keys, and she did achieve it. So it's July the 1st, 2015, and I'm sitting in my 5-bedroom detached neo-Georgian house near Guildford. So you can see it's quite specific in detail. The lounge is 45 foot long and 25 foot wide, and the floors throughout the house are oak. The room is decorated in pastel shades of green, blending in perfectly with the French curtains and the Italian furniture. There's a spatial feel about the whole house, as each room is large, allowing a sense of freedom. Each room is decorated to my taste, and I'm delighted with the overall feel of the house. I can see the garden through the window, the beautifully manicured lawns bordered by borders filled with summer blossoms. And as I smell the scents of the garden floating through the French windows, I reflect back at the time, 3 years ago when I wrote this goal, and recall the first step of the journey to this house when I set up my own practice. My house has a large office where I now operate my business in therapy, coaching and training. And my husband and daughter and I are happier and closer and are all enjoying the new space afforded by the house. As I sit here now, I have a real sense of achievement, a feeling of well-being and excitement of finally achieving some of my potential. And the house is mortgaged 50% of its value on the day that I purchased it. So it's quite specific, it's got a lot of evidence, it's got a lot of sensory, using the senses, and when you look at it, it does conform to all of those. Now you may not want to be in the neo-Georgian house in 3 years' time, but what I'm asking you to do is see where you, have a think about where you're going to be in a year's time and write down, it's the 6th of September 2020 and I am. So have a go. Really it needs to be a story, sort of like sort of paragraphs, but if you find it easier to just bullet point it to start with, then you can turn it into a story afterwards. So we're around for help. Is there any questions about how to do that?
Only that I'm feeling anxious to write down a goal because I'm worried about all the goals I've written down and they don't seem to materialise.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that completely. This course is designed to get rid of all the blocks that are stopping you from getting that goal. So go for it, magic wand stuff. Make it realistic, but go for what you really want. Okay, because if you haven't got what you really want, then you won't be able to work backwards and find out what the first step is, which is why you're ending up not doing anything. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Is it going to have multiple goals, or is it just going to be one goal?
Well, it's a whole life goal, so it needs to include all of the bits of your life. So there will be multiple goals in it, because in this one there's, she's got a coaching practice, they're in this great space and she's really excited and she can describe the space. Yeah. If you start, pen on paper and see what happens. Okay?
Already gone wrong.
Hmm?
I said already going to start again.
Fine, so we're here if you need to ask us anything. So you're more or less there or thereabouts. How about you, Cara?
Yeah, I am finding it better.
Are you finding it?
I'm finding it quite tough actually.
Yeah.
I'll work on it more tonight.
Yeah. So what are you doing? Yeah. How are you nearly finished, Simon?
Got the bare bones of something down.
Yeah, lovely. Well, yeah, because you can sort that out tonight after you've done your VAT.
After I've done my VAT.
Okay,
I'm
so
promising myself I'm never going to do that again.
you've all been scribbling away and some of you have been smiling and looking quite content with things. Others have found it a little bit tougher, I think, and we can work on that later on. So, shall we just share the bare bones of what you've got now, because I think that's going to be useful for us in terms of supporting you to move forward. And
can I just ask a quick question? I don't know if this makes me sound paranoid, but is this part being filmed? Or we're talking
only
about?
me.
Oh, okay.
It's only going to my
Your
master trainer.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, and I was just, because I might feel a little bit maybe slightly embarrassed about saying some of the stuff.
Right. So that probably needs to go on your chart. We'll see what it is, but
Yeah.
depending on what you've got in there, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So who wants to go first?
Do I go first?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it is 6th of September 2020, and I'm sitting at my desk in my study. The study has pictures of my cruise along the Mekong on its walls, and I have two dogs by my side enjoying the sunshine. I'm enjoying.
Good.
Yeah. I'm enjoying the flexibility that working 3 days a week allows. I enjoy the challenge of using my brain through working with young people to help them achieve, whether it's employment, confidence, health and well-being, because I think I need to do something with my brain and my skills. So through working with young people to help them achieve employment, confidence, health, well-being, whatever. The flexibility allows me to exercise regularly as well as see my family and friends more, and also gives me the resources from earning £200 a day. I feel confident that I have made the right decision to take the voluntary redundancy.
Lovely. It sounds quite compelling. How does that make you feel?
Really
or
good.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, honestly.
In terms, just some feedback which may be relevant to other people. Brilliant goal. You had a sort of seeing your family more.
Yeah.
And that's what we call a comparative deletion. And your unconscious mind won't know what that is.
Okay. So specify twice a week.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. And who in your family maybe?
Yeah.
Because you might have family, you've got family scattered in Canada, haven't you?
Yeah. So
maybe add
once a
something
year.
in about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Just so that your mind knows precisely what you're doing. Cool, well done.
I haven't got very far because I've got a big mind.
No, that's lovely mind that.
So
good for creativity.
it's the 6th of the 9th, 2020, and I'm sitting here at the dining table full of gratitude for all that has happened. I'm sitting in our new living kitchen diner that's a huge 40-foot by 12-foot, looking at the shiny white kitchen with the island that has given Tom and I the space to cook together and to fulfil our gifts of hospitality. Through the bifold doors, I'm looking at a beautiful garden with raised beds that's so productive with flowers, fruit and veg. The whole house was redecorated really tastefully over the last year and I love it. It's neat and tidy and our cleaner is a gem. Tom and I are happy and closer than ever, and this last year we really learned to work harmoniously together. And that's as far as I got on that.
Okay. You're going to put things about work and
all on
you've got
different
all there.
piece.
Okie doke. Yeah,
So I've got
sounds good.
work, health, a bit more on relationships, and some on finances.
So when you're talking about relationships, saying we're even closer together, it's about what you've done to increase that love. That's what I feel. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. And maybe define that word closer.
Yes, because that's another comparative
Ambiguous.
deletion. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
It's the 6th of the 9th, 2000, and I'm looking over the blue sea with the mountains behind me. My business is on autopilot, bringing in 10k a month. I can literally see the numbers in my Stripe account increasing by hundreds of pounds per hour, which is exactly what I need to secure the piece of land behind me for the construction, the 50 acres of land behind me for the construction of my dream home and events retreat space. I feel amazing because it's the healthiest I've ever felt, as I have regular access to the best nutrition and I'm surrounded by such amazing people. I'm looking forward to my broadcasted event with 2,000 people that's really going to change many lives. I feel appreciative that I get to work with people that are my friends and that I love. And I'm looking to see them improve their lives and families.
And you're looking to
help them improve their lives and families. I think I'll jump on the Harley and ride down the coast to meet the gang for our evening meal. My finances are unbelievably simple. I make more than I care to spend at the moment because I can then use it to build my ideas. The plans for the 50 acres and the building are finalised, ready to start tomorrow.
Nice. No? No? Good?
Maybe just one thing. You said that your finances, I just wanted to check the ecology of it.
Yeah.
You know, on one hand you said that you're billing 10k a month,
Yeah.
fantastic, but then you said your finances are simple.
Yeah.
Just wanted to check that was okay and
So
what does simple mean to
yeah,
you?
so I think that I'm kind of in control and I understand it, which is something that I don't currently.
Right, okay.
It's out of control at the moment, so.
Okay, so again, that's something that you need to mention.
Yeah.
Okay. Karen?
It's the 6th of the 9th, 2020, and I'm sitting in my shared office at home, happy and engaged, working from home on my online coaching business that offers me the financial freedom, flexibility and control to live the life that I want while positively impacting and adding value to others. I'm excited about the travel plans I have to visit California coming up soon with my boyfriend. A first-class long-haul flight will be just the chance to relax and enjoy the me time as we anticipate our break. I'm glad to be relaxed and full of energy and vitality, invested in my relationships with my friends and family. I'm clear in what I want from life, where I want to prioritise my time and energy, and that I'm able to provide well for myself and my family, my friends, and I don't feel restricted in what I want to achieve. As a reminder in my calendar goes off to check back on progress against the goals I set exactly a year ago, I feel an intense feeling of pride and gratitude. That's as far as I've got.
Okay. Sounds really, that's really compelling for you, is it? Yeah. Cool. There was one thing that I've now forgotten. I like it a lot. It's brilliant. Well done. Provide well for your family. It just needs some more specifics.
Okay.
And there's a bit of an away from that you're not restricted by something. So maybe if you can just flip that over to make it a positive statement. There was something else, but we can go through it tomorrow. Have you got anything?
Just maybe be a little bit perhaps more specific about what you want to do.
Okay.
But otherwise,
So did you say an online
I said online coaching business just
coaching
because
business?
I think I'm trying to grasp ideas of things I can do when I don't actually really know what I want to do yet.
So maybe you could say something that's sort of like a business that gives me flexibility.
Right.
So
you don't have to be, okay,
and you know also how much is that bringing you in, because you know that providing well needs a bit of meat on the bones so that your unconscious mind will know what it's heading for and you can work backwards from it.
Okay.
Great. Exciting.
Okay. I've written 6 September 2016, Just finished building the new extension on our house.
Can I just stop you in terms of it's 2020?
Sorry, 2000.
Just interesting.
2000. That is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gone back to another life. 6 September 2020. And we finished building a new extension on the house. The whole process has taken over 2 years to complete. We're very happy with the end product of a new bedroom and a new dining room. Businesses have been a great success. The property business has eventually been able to start building the 13 new flats in Blackwood, and I've managed to increase the turnover in the IT business to over 250k a year. I've also managed to hold on to the apartment in Spain with my brother as we've managed to refinance the whole property. I'm currently sat in Spain, and I've also managed to stop taking my blood pressure medication as I managed to bring my blood pressure down naturally.
What's the managed about? Because there's lots of managed in there.
I don't know.
It's almost like you didn't think you were going to, but you did.
Yeah, I think. Well, I guess a little bit. I'm still kind of trying to clarify exactly what I sort of want that goal to sort of be. Sort of whether I'm not sure whether it's. There's a couple of parts of the business that I do want to go ahead with, but there's with the IT business.
So it's, you've got quite a lot of specifics about the
numbers.
business. It's just the I don't know what it did to my head when you said managed. What does it mean to you, managed?
Succeeded.
Okay.
That's kind of what it meant.
What do you think about the word managed?
I think, first of all, I liked your goal. I like how specific it was.
Yeah.
And I think what you could do even better is just manage. Just do it.
Yeah.
So, I have this, and I'm doing this. Not I've managed to have this and managed to do it, just drop the manage bit out.
It's funny, isn't it? For me, in my model of the world, manage seems to imply a bit of struggle.
Yeah, maybe it is, unconsciously that's probably what, well, that's the reason why I'm kind of, these are kind of goals that I would have perceived to have been, well, at the moment, the way things are panning out in my life, they would be unattainable or they certainly don't seem possible, but that's what I obviously would like to turn around.
So I think if you're having the word manage, your unconscious mind is going to manage.
Just enough, isn't it?
Right. So why don't you just...
It doesn't say exceeded or...
Yeah.
Does for me, like, managed almost sounds like surviving.
Yeah, in a classroom situation, managing would be managing behaviour and managing the children so that they're not running around and managing them, managing behaviour. In my
sounds like effort to me.
Yeah.
So just think that one through tonight, and if you got rid of all the things that were getting in your way, would you be able to get that? I mean, it needs to also be realistic. Like, I'm pretty sure you could do that, but you need to be sure. Because you were just saying a minute ago that it seems unattainable. Is that because of your limitations at the moment?
Yeah, exactly, because of limitations right now. Yeah, exactly. That's the only reason why. It's not attainable because I can't change it. It's because as I sit today, there's certain processes that are happening right now that are going against that, but I want to turn those around, to start turning them around so they're going the other way towards making them a success.
Okay. Cool. Brilliant.
So I think that's where that negative connotations come from.
Okay, so have a look at that tonight and decide
Yeah.
whether to just remove it or to use a different word. So any questions, any thoughts, anything that you want to ask, so that you can write that out tonight?
I guess if it's like a monetary goal, then it's good to list how that would be achieved.
You can say I did this by doing, or you can keep the goal as it is, and then once you've got it, you can work backwards from it to find the how. You can also put it in compelling goal. So Junior Whittaker jumped on his horse, he looked at his watch, he thought to himself, I know exactly how I'm going to win this. I'm going to believe in myself, I'm going to believe in my horse, and I know exactly the direction that I need to go and the twists and turns that I need to take. And he set off in a very careful, controlled but also quite speedy way, and ran the race. Won the race. So yeah, and the little canoe paddle sort of wiggled, and all of a sudden I saw them both emerge, and I felt a huge sense of relief. I gave them a cup of tea and said, do you want me to call you a taxi, or how are we going to get you home? And no, they said, I'm going to head off down to Bridgend. I know what I need to do. And I spoke to Chris, and I said, that's it, that's what we need to do. So yesterday, he came down and removed all the stumps of the ash trees and levelled all the grass. And all of a sudden, I could actually see what I needed to do, and I had a big plan. And I'm going to be working with him on that to achieve that over the next year. And yes, so we've nearly got to the end of the day now, which is cool. I've got some homework for you, just a little bit, just to think about and amongst the VAT. Okay, so has everyone done their representational system? You just leave it on a sec, Chris. That's fine. Have you just done your representational system test? Has everyone done that? Anyone hasn't? So it's in can we find that? It's just while I'm chatting. Seeing this now. Clips.
Page 22.
22.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. So if you can do that but not share your results with anyone, that would be really good. Whether you've done yours before, haven't you? Whether you've got the results. How about you, Dennis? Have you done yours recently? Do you know what? I don't want to know, but yeah. Cool. Complete writing your goal. So just make sure that you look at all the achievable outcome keys. Make sure it's really, really compelling, really specific, and that you know exactly, where you're going this time next year, where you'll be this time next year. And reflect on your goals and bring any reflections to start of tomorrow, because we'll be just checking over your goals tomorrow morning. Then what I'd like you to do is think of something that you like that you wish you didn't like in terms of food or drink. So could be chocolates, bread, crisps, anything that you feel might be good for your health to give up. So anyone got any ideas about that now?
Or if you like them, you really like them.
I thought about coffee.
Like
Coffee?
salted crisps.
Yeah.
Salted crisps?
Lightly salted, I love them.
Yeah. And do you want to continue
Oh, I do
eating
like
them?
them, yeah. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
I do want to, I like them, and I don't eat, I eat one every third day I'll have a packet. So,
So just think it through.
yeah.
How would it be if you didn't have any?
Yeah.
Is there something that you go out for Like we've had McDonald's and things that people have changed. Something that, you know, maybe you wish you hadn't eaten or drunk the day after.
Could it be the amount
Yeah.
of something?
No, it needs to be a specific thing.
That's the issue with me. I can't just eat one packet. If I have one, I could have a second one. 'Cause there's not enough. Or if it's a big pack of crisps like that, I'll eat the whole packet.
Okay.
But I,
So is that what you want to do?
want to eat a little packet.
So how would it be if you didn't eat those crisps at all? Would it bother you?
No. Yeah, it's fine. I like them.
What about you, Sam?
Probably bread.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've got a problem with bread. I like bread too much, and I know it isn't great for you. So I think I'd like to, if I could cut out bread in my life, I think that would be quite good.
Yeah, good. What about you, Karen?
I drink an unreasonable amount of tea.
Do
And I
you?
really enjoy it, which is, I get where you're coming from. It's like
Yeah.
you have to give it up totally, but then if you perceive yourself as not liking it, you're not going to miss it, are you? So it doesn't
No.
matter that you're not.
Depends whether you're happy with not drinking it.
Yeah, because I wouldn't know any different because I think that I don't like it. So it
Mhm.
would be the same as, like, I wouldn't ever eat a snail, I don't think. So it would be the same as missing eating a snail that I was never going to eat anyway,
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
yeah,
So,
yeah. Okay, cool. Brilliant. June?
I'm really struggling with this one.
Mm-hmm.
I guess because I've had to stop eating and drinking certain things anyway over the last 5 years, or at least cut them right back. And I recently did a detox,
Right.
so I was already drinking decaf coffee. I did this detox and I maybe have 1 cup of coffee a week now,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't crave it. I enjoy it when I have it, but I don't have it lots. And the same happened to alcohol. So, and I'm not eating much bread at all because of my diabetes. So actually, I'm grappling. I can only offer you Brussels sprouts, and I hate them, so it won't work.
Well, we can use Brussels sprouts for the dislike that you switch it to.
Yeah, but now that would be interesting.
So how about the bread? Is that something that you want to give up completely?
To be honest, I haven't had. I maybe have it once in every 8 weeks.
Right.
That's not.
So you're going to need something.
Yeah, I know.
So I'll leave it with you.
Does it have to be food or drink?
Yes, really.
I'll have
I'll
to
leave-
let my subconscious bring that one up tonight while I'm asleep.
yeah. Ask it. Yeah.
I know what moved me when I did practitioner. I was staying at a Premier Inn opposite to a pizza place, and The Voice was on Saturday evening, and I thought, oh, I'll just get a pizza and sit and watch The Voice. And the next day I felt like this because I rarely ate pizza, probably 2 or 3 times a year because I know it made me feel so bloated. But I've not had pizza since, and I don't get that bloated feeling that I used to get from my 1 or 2 times of pizza, which were always in those moments of, oh, yeah, everybody else is having some pizza tomorrow as well, or, oh, I'm on my own, nearest place is a pizza place. There's always other options.
So, yeah. So we've all got something. I don't know if you want to do anything else.
I'm meat because I'm slowly becoming vegetarian, and when I go out, the only thing I find hard to resist is a nice steak with nice sauce. So probably steak.
So one of you's going to need to join in with the exercises tomorrow. So if you want to do that.
Anybody wants practice? I'll put that 6th.
Oh, have you?
Get ready,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. We put aside another day.
Anyone wants extra practice?
Yeah. No. Cool, yeah, because that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Mm.
Working on all the things.
So I wonder whether I'm struggling because actually I feel like I've given up so many things already.
Mm-hmm. So I'll leave it with you. Chat to your husband and have a think. Okay, so tomorrow we're going to be starting at 9 to 9:30. If you're all here early, we'll start earlier. Have a think about any questions that you might like to ask about today. Sort out your goal, do your test, and think of something you like that you'd like to dislike. Absolutely. That's about right. And yeah. So, I know what's wrong. So she looked at the window, she looked at the curtains, and she went over and she went, shh. And you know, in that moment, everything changed. Do you know what? The paintings on the wall were all coloured. The wall was white. The apron of the waitress was nice and pink. I looked across at my friend and she was smiling, and she said, this is a really brilliant day. And I looked out of the window. You could see all the flowers and the grass and the squirrels, but the squirrels are another day, another story. And it just seemed totally different. Spat it out. Absolutely disgusting. Really, really disgusting. And I thought, well, how is it that Rick can actually make something that's absolutely stunning, whereas I can't? And I went to sleep and I thought, I bet my unconscious mind will work on that, because there's got to be a difference between the two of us somehow. And he looked in the shield and he said, I see what you mean now, I know what I need to change. And he was just sort of stumped over and just looking like this and looking down and wasn't smiling. And he said, well, how about if I just straighten up? I just straighten up and really stand out. How will that affect me? So he tried it. And all of his confidence came flooding back because of the way he was standing. His mum, Cleopatra, just clapped. His dad thought, good on you, son, or something along the Roman lines. And all of the people that were supposed to be following him into battle just lined up beside him. And he said, forward, and off they marched to win another war. So see you all tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll be doing rapport, sensory acuity, representational systems, and starting submodalities. So it's quite an exciting day.